I was not expecting June to be such a good reading month for me. Statistically, it's more of a slumpier month for me, but this month I read a new favorite book and I binge read an entire series that is probably a new favorite series of mine as well. So I'm feeling pretty good, although I also read probably my worst book of the year. So you win some, you lose some. Welcome to my June reading wrap up. In this video, I'm going to give you short little reviews about all the books that I read this month and tell you which ones I loved, which ones I didn't, which ones I think you should pick up, and some fun little stats about my reading year. Let's start with the stats. I read a total of 12 books this month, which is pretty much on average with what I'm reading. A total of 5,610 pages read. Probably on the higher end of what I've been reading. I've been sitting in more of the 4,000 range for most months. This equals out to be an average of 187 pages a day. I feel like that's a lot of pages to read each day. So I'm gonna give myself a pat on the back for that one. And the average page count of a book is 467 pages this month. To no one's surprise, I say this every month, my most read genre is fantasy romance. Listen, I'm riding a high. It's not going anywhere. Like, look at these stunning books. For the star rating breakdown, I gave one book 5 stars. Do you know what one that is already? Can you guess in the comments? Were you watching my vlogs? 6 books 4 stars. I'm thriving on 4 stars this year. 3 books 4 stars. 0 2 stars. But I did give out 1 star this month. This is only my second 1 star of the year, which if you know me, I think that's a really good thing. I typically give out a lot more 1 or 2 stars, but I'm thriving in my higher star ratings this year. Maybe not a lot of 5 stars, but the 4 stars are bringing it this year for me. This ends up with an average star rating of 3.5. The only month higher than this is February, and I remember saying this exact same thing last month, so does this mean I'm just like on an upward journey right now? Because I'm okay with that. I read 2 new releases, 9 backlist, and 1 last year release. I read only 2 fantasy books this month, 1 thriller, and I read 9 fantasy romance. I like what I like these days. I do want the like fantasy to come back. I would like to read more of this style. I don't want to read less of this style, but like I have 2 parts of my fantasy personality and the romance reader in me has gripped me by the throat. I think I personally am struggling with traditionally published books right now. I'm struggling with fantasy. Nothing that is being published is really calling to me where the fantasy romance really are. That's it for my stats though. We can get right on into the actual reviews. The first book I read this month was Bonesmith. I gave this book 3 stars. I did enjoy my time with this one, but it was a little flat. I do plan on continuing since it's just a duology because I thought the world was really intricate. I loved the magic system. The characters definitely were not as well fleshed out as I would like them to be. I think it read younger YA. 15-year-old Cassidy would have ate the series up. I still enjoyed it, but it definitely wasn't a new favorite. Essentially in this world, the dead come back to life if they're not properly buried, and they haunt and ruin the land and murder people. So we have bonesmiths that perform rituals on them and help save the day. But our main character fails her trial and cannot be a bonesmith. She's sent out to the guard tower to work there, where she meets the prince. She befriends the prince, but then the prince gets kidnapped and she's like, well, I guess I'm the only person who can save him. So she goes on a journey with a very unlikely ally to save the prince and save the day. However, she's probably going to unlock a lot of conspiracy theories. As I said, I definitely enjoyed this one. I think it had really cool world building, so pick it up if you're looking for something more unique. After that, I picked up The Family Experiment by John Mars, my thriller of the month. I enjoyed this one. I did give it 3 stars. It's not a new favorite like The Passengers was, but I still had a really good time with it. There's some really deep conversations in this about AI and virtual reality and things like that, which are all things that are becoming way more prevalent in our society, which I think is such an interesting story to read about. In this, essentially, we're following a reality show with 11 contestants, 9 months to win the perfect child. These couples get to raise a child from 0 to teenage years within the span of a year. It is a virtual child and it is broadcasted live for everyone to see every single action. It's a gigantic reality show, and at the end, the audience is going to vote for the one that they want to win, the couple they like the most, the people they thought were the best parents, and they will either get to keep their child or get money to raise their own child, because essentially in this post-world, it's set on Earth, but like not in our time line, obviously. It's like a little bit in the future. The cost of raising a family is far too much money, so most people can't afford it. There is definitely really interesting storylines in this. I wish the chapters had been a little bit longer. I wish it was a shorter story. I think it just ran too long. The twist was a little bit predictable, so I think it just needed to be a little bit shorter. I had too much time to be like, that's the twist while reading. But overall, I still enjoyed this one. After that, I picked up Feybound, which again, I gave 3 stars. I had a little run of 3 stars here. This one follows 2 sisters in a world of elves. However, the one sister betrays her country. She doesn't listen to the command in the army. She decides to go off and do her own thing. Relatable. She is exiled out into the wasteland. Her sister follows her because she can't let her go alone. They find themselves in the hand of the Fae, which have long thought to be gone, to not exist anymore. However, the Fae exist. They are trapped underneath the ground. This one works really well for an art fantasy prompt. If you are needing it for bingo, it all happens underground. And they are looking for a way to escape the curse that has been put on them. Will these 2 siblings be the key that they've been looking for? I don't really know what to say about this one. I really just felt like it was very mid. It was very average. I really liked the start, but the romance in this fell flat for me, and the romance is a heavy plotline to the story. So the fact that I wasn't loving that didn't really work for me. One is friends to lovers, one is enemies to lovers, but the enemies are enemies one day and then all of a sudden in love the next day, and there's no like build up to it in my opinion. But I also liked the idea of the story. I will be continuing in it when the new book gets announced. Oh, the start of the fun time vibes for Cassidy. I picked up something completely out of my comfort zone and read Broken Bonds by J. Bree. This is a why choose urban fantasy, which all of those don't seem like Cassidy words. I gave this book 4 stars. I had so much fun with it. It's not it in terms of writing. Personally, I would not sit here and tell you, oh, this is Shakespeare, perfect literature. No. This is Wattpad circa 2010. This is fun, good time read, don't take too seriously, but fall in love with the men and the characters. And honestly, I do think that there is a cool plot in this. I actually enjoyed the world building as the story went on. Essentially, we're following our main character who is bonded to 5 men. However, she knows something about herself, and she knows it is unsafe for her to bond and become more powerful, because that's what happens when you bond. And if she bonds with 5 of the strongest men, she's going to become unstoppable, and that's not okay. So she runs from her fate, she runs from her bonded, and it breaks everything inside of her. They are angry, and they find her, and essentially keep her captive as she bonds with them, one by one throughout the series. I think I can just get out of way the other 5 books in the series that I read right now, because I binged this entire series this month. I read all 6 of them. I gave all of them 4 stars except for the 5th book. I do think it could have ended 1 book sooner. I think it was a little bit too long in my opinion. But at the same time, I ate up all 6 books. And like, can I say that I didn't want it to be 6 books long in the end? Because I enjoyed that final book quite a bit. If you read these, I need to know your tier ranking of the men down below. Mine is North, Knox, Griffin, Gabe, Alice. Let me know down below who your favorite is. North has my heart. I love a man who's gonna take care of me, even when I don't want him to. But yeah, this was so easy bingeable. So yeah, I read all of these this month, this entire series. Pretty much all were 4 stars. Told you I was thriving. If you're looking just to like have fun, if you want something like audiobook these and do some stuff like some chores, you don't have to pay too much attention. These are the vibe. Maybe I should give them 5 stars. I'm unsure at this point, because when I think back, I had the time of my life reading these this month. I thoroughly just like smiled and giggled and had a silly goofy time with them. They do get deep though. While I'm telling you that, don't think they don't get deep. There are some deep discussions in this. There's also some dubious consent within this first book, but you know I had a good time. Then I read One Dark Window, which was my 5 star for the month. Listen, I'm thriving. I had such a good reading month. In this, we're following our main character who has a nightmare living inside of her. In this world, there are these cards that give people power. I thought that was so interesting, and when you touch the card you can use the power. However, our main character at one point developed a sickness, and people who live through this sickness end up with magic, but magic has a price in this world. While you use the magic, it degrades your body, and so she has a nightmare living inside of her. That's what her magic did to her. But the nightmare helps her often as she's on a quest to find all of the cards with this lovely found family that she's found. This beautiful, beautiful man that stumbled across her one night and found out her secret. And they're trying to find the full deck so that they can end the reign of the king that's in power right now, because he is not so nice. A maiden must unleash the monster within to save her kingdom in this dark, lush, gothic fantasy debut. I have never read a magic system quest quite like this. In my opinion, I thought it was really interesting. Do I think the characters were the most well developed? No, but I loved the story. I thought it was a lot of fun. I really liked the atmosphere of this book. I gave it 5 stars. It was like a vibes only kind of story for me. It isn't like the most detailed, we can sit down, we can have a really, really long book club discussion about what everything means. I'm in it for the fun vibes right now. That's all I need in my life currently, and this hit it really good for me. Next up in my like sheet are the rest of the Broken Bond series, so we're gonna skip over those because I already went over them, but I read them, loved them, vibed with them. Please pick them up. Oh, have you been waiting for the 1 star to pop up? Because I read To Bleed a Crystal Bloom by Sarah A. Parker and I gave this 1 star. I should have known better. I also didn't love When the Moon Hatched, even though everyone was screaming, crying, throwing up about that book. I don't like the writing style. It does not work in my brain, and this has that same writing style as When the Moon Hatched. But I will say my biggest issue with this is that I got the ick. I feel like we have a Renesmee style trope in this. If you are a Twilight fan, I feel like you'll know exactly what I mean by that. Essentially, in the story, we're following our main character, who is saved as a 2-year-old from some monsters, and her family's all dead, and she is raised in a tower by the man who saves her. He drinks a drop of her blood every single night, just throwing that out there for the extra creepiness. And as she reaches maturity, they are definitely in love with each other, but he's raised her his entire life. Like, he raised her from 2 up, and I just couldn't get past that. That gave me the ick. I wasn't here for it. Not a me kind of story, apparently. I thought I was here for a fun time, for a captee style. I feel like everyone pulls this out to be like she's a captive locked in a tower. Like, the back of this says, what a pretty flower to keep locked in a big rocky tower. She's not locked in that tower. Her captiveness is of her own doing. She's too scared to leave. I do think that there is somewhat of an interesting plot in this, and if I could get past that ick, I think I could have liked it. But I couldn't get past that. So if you can, if that's something that does not bother you, pick this up. I just didn't like that we saw her and him interact when she was 2. It just, I feel like if I hadn't got the prologue, I could skip the prologue and I would maybe like this. But it got a 1 star from me. We're gonna move on. And the last book I read this month was A Court of Blood and Bindings. I gave this one 3 stars. I don't think I'm gonna continue in this series. I do think it has a really cool magic system. In this, we're using color and we're pulling color to use magic. So red is an aggressive color, so you can use aggressive like offense with it, versus blue, which is a healing color. And you have to like pull the color out of things to use that magic, which I thought was really cool. Kind of gave me Warbreaker Brandon Sanderson vibes. We also have some representation with the male main character does not talk. He is a mute. I don't think he's like, I think he will talk later on in the series, so I'm not sure how much rep this really is, but in this first book, he doesn't talk. He has to communicate in other ways. They did that really well using sign language and paper, and I thought it was really well handled, and it didn't take away from the story because I'm such a big like banter girl. I was really nervous about that. I do think that there's really good banter in like the first 100, 200 pages. The romance after that becomes a little too lovey-dovey sweet for me. I think it leans to friends to lovers, even though the back makes it seem like enemies to lovers. So if you're a friends to lovers girly, I think you will really enjoy this story. We're following our main character who has magic in a place where you're not supposed to have magic. She actually lives in a town that is rebelling against the Fae. When the big bad silent death comes, he sees her use her magic and knows there's something up with her, and he takes her away, but he doesn't take her to the queen, which is what everyone expects because he's like the queen's right-hand man, is known for brutally killing everyone and all that stuff, but instead makes a deal with her to help take down the queen. And I do think that there's some really interesting concepts in this. It didn't hit for me, but I think it'll hit for a lot of other people. Maybe if I hear really good things about the rest of the series, I could pick it up, because like as I'm talking to you about it, I think that I'm interested by where it could go. But I remember not really caring as I read the story. I did listen to the audiobook, which is a downfall for me in fantasy romance sometimes. So who knows? I don't know. Let me know. Should I continue? Is this worth continuing in? I would love to know what your best book of the month was so that I can go check it out, because I'm always looking for new books to read. Because I asked you for help on both the Court of Blood and Binding and the Ties That Bond series and star rating. I'm gonna leave the vlog where I read both of those on the screen for you to check out, so then you can tell me down below what I should make my star rating, if I should leave them or change them. If you made it all the way to the end of this video and like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me a rainbow emoji for A Court of Blood and Bindings, and have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day. Cheers to July being an even better reading month for us.